welcome back to another exciting AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. I know it's a short week this week, but we have a lot to cram in, so stay tuned ultimately today. Today, we're excited to be joined by Noah Hamman. We're going to be spending some time talking through the recent exciting cannabis news, as well as doing a little bit of Q&A. I know you were busy online over the weekend trying to answer people's questions and bring in some clarity. We're doing a little bit more of that today as well. So if you're out there and joining, a good reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll try to get to them as we go along. All that said, Noah, thanks for joining. How was last week? Coming back, I know you were busy on the road, and then we got the news finally after so much waiting, so much
Yes,
anticipation.
probably not a great time to be on the road dealing with some kid moving stuff, but yes, I was watching it closely, and it was sort of a crazy week going from the article on the Washington Post a week ago Thursday, right, to the up 50% for the basket on Friday, and then a little pullback, and then a little up again. Then we started to get some clarity that there would be some news announcement potentially, right, with the executive order in the Oval Office. They announced that there would be one, but not that it was cannabis related. But seemingly, as we got closer, more and more articles and a lot of mainstream media stuff, right? Coverage that we don't typically get coverage from ABC, NBC, Fox, everybody, CNN, everybody talking about this coming, which was really interesting. And you had the prohibitionists, on full alert and getting the whole psychosis. Everyone's going insane from using cannabis stories. It was a crazy week, and so yeah, as I was making my way up north in the moving van, I was actually driving along with my kid and getting quote updates, right, looking at how things were going. And I think that day, right, things started off okay, nicely. I remember thinking, boy, this isn't as up as big as I would think it would be if this announcement is the announcement that we think it would be. And at the same time, I'm like, all right, well, it's just an executive order. But if Pam Bondi's in there and she's like, yeah, I'm signing it and we're all good, you just didn't know really what to expect, and even didn't know 100% certain that it was for cannabis, even though it felt like it obviously was, and it turned out to be. Um, and then I think it was what, 30 minutes, maybe around 1 o'clock, was there's a significant sell down, initiated a halt on the ETF itself, not the underlying securities. And then it just seemed like it would trade and then halt and then trade and then halt from there. And then sort of post the announcement, after we went all through that craziness, yeah, everyone was dumping, or not everyone, some amount of people, significant amount of people were dumping. High volume, aggressive trading, all to the seemingly downside pressure. So it all sucked, well, quite frankly, to watch that happen. I can come up with rationales and whatever, right? People have talked about, oh, it was so CBD oriented, and he said, re-emphasize that it wasn't legal. Um, or what else did he say? Something he re-emphasized it wasn't legal, mostly focused in
He
on
wouldn't
CBD. Oh, and
think
then
he
said
was
he
saying,
wouldn't use it. Right. Said, well, it's all good for you guys, but I'm never going to use it.
just fine.
Um, yeah, which is fine. But, so maybe not the
Not
most
new.
positive message. But then that was actually it. There was no Bondi memo issue. There was no, her announcing right after that it's all done. And so an executive order is awesome and it's great to get him to say it, right? So many people all year long have been, oh, he's been quiet since, before the election. And then we saw the video drop, from his Truth Social account. So to have him in the White House saying, hey, I'm for this, I want this done, that's awesome. Now, technically, I think at least, and again, it might have been lip service, but Biden said he wanted it done right at the beginning. Then with the HHS
Mhm.
announcement, initiating that process around the midterms. But for all intent and purposes, as best as I can tell, he was intending on sticking to his promises. And then obviously when HHS was done and they did their part and it got to the DEA, in my opinion, my words, it seemingly got stonewalled from people who didn't want it to proceed. And so the ALJ process that everyone else is familiar with. So you look at all that and say, all right, I've got an executive order that doesn't guarantee me that the various administrative agencies will move this forward. But again, depending on how close or far you are to this space, which again, understanding we had so much volume with so much mainstream coverage, both on the upside and then healthy amount, really on the downside, even though thankfully we seemingly had much, more on the creates, obviously, than the redemption side, but we still may see some redemptions coming. We'll see. It's just still fantastic news, even though nothing's really changed yet. So for me, a very disappointing reaction. But at the same time, I don't want to say that I don't care, right? I do care. It's stomach turning to watch it go down, but I'm not selling that day. I'm not striking a gain or a loss that day. I'm going to continue to, allocate. I use options as well, but longer term dated options. And I think the price will come to where I want it to be, right, over time, even though I didn't get the reaction I hoped to have gotten that day. And then, so yeah, and then, you kind of march from there. I was still out of pocket Friday. So I couldn't really stay online and stay engaged with people, at least, on X, on the internet. And so then I, wanted to just take time to respond to questions. And the tricky part about that is, it has a tendency to really draw out some of the crazies. And so I just don't genuinely like spending time with people who make crazy statements and operate under anonymous accounts. But I also, at the same time, want to be transparent, right? I've gotten enough feedback to know that for the people that follow and want to hear, our thoughts or my thoughts, they're not out there responding and engaging, but getting the information, being able to read it in their feed is helpful for them to just, get the perspective, right? They'll still ultimately come to their own decisions and conclusions from what happened. So as much as possible, I try to answer as many questions as I could, but I also got holiday activities and family in town coming in. But it's important to me to try to give my best perspective, right? And all of it seemingly centering around stock manipulation. Are you calling the SEC? What am I going to call them and tell the SEC? These guys on the internet think there's stock manipulation. Bodog 2020 thinks it's all bad. All right, thanks.
Sure.
Um, so, but and is there manipulation? I don't know. I don't see it. Was there a crap ton of volatility? Did the prices not go in the direction I wanted them to go? That's very obvious. But who made money? Who didn't make money? I don't have any insight. I don't have any data around it. And contrary to some amount of belief, mostly in anonymous accounts, you just don't call up the SEC and say, "I demand you go investigate that." Okay,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
get right to it.
Yeah. I think the conspiracy theories tend to crop up when there's some confusion ultimately, or when things are in the red, generally.
Yeah,
But like you're saying, if you
and
had
it's
bought just a week before, ahead of the run up that we saw on Friday, the week before, you would probably be feeling
yeah.
really good. So it is one of those
And it's
things
not a
where,
conspiracy theory to say that there could be manipulation going on. These are OTC stocks, right? They don't have the same oversight as stocks on a listed exchange. And so, is somebody out there trying to push prices around potentially to their own benefit? Probably. Is it some guaranteed money making scheme? I doubt it. Are they taking risk as they are pushing around the stock because they've got to push it up to push it down? Or if they're pushing it down and shorting it, at some point, they've got to buy to cover, I would presume. So they're taking risks, and I saw people referencing dark pools and swaps again. Become the boogeyman for stuff, and it's like, from my perspective, it's not the swaps. Swaps are swaps. It's not dark pools, and dark pools aren't illegal. I don't know that these are trading in the dark pools, but even if they were, not illegal. And that's just the way the financial markets work. And you got a high volatility category. You seemingly have enough willing active traders, which is also the funny thing too. It's almost as if the people don't see all the other accounts that I see tagging MSOS saying I faded this, I shorted that, I'm long calls here, I wrote calls
mm,
here, puts, whatever. There's a lot of activity around this category for for a bunch of stocks that unfortunately still do not enjoy regular listing. So it's very obvious people are very active with trading, and it's very obvious when you look at ETF trading volume relative to outstanding shares. I think one day alone for the leverage version, it traded like 1.25 times the outstanding shares in one day. Right, with minimal, I think, flows, if any, that day or over the course of the next couple of days. So it's just traders, it's just money, flipping back and forth. So, and it's again subsector OTC traded federal Schedule Drug 1 stocks. It's easy to push around. It's easy to move. It sucks when it doesn't move in the direction you want it to move in. It sucks if you are short-term trading and you lose money on it. Um, it sucks when I see the value of my portfolio go down, for those days. Even
Yeah.
though we've had a freaking awesome 6 months, right? Up, up of a basket, let's call it, of US stocks. Up by, at least when I was looking at Morningstar, up around 125%. And when I looked year to date, maybe not after today, because we're still seeing red on the screens, which is also interesting, right? I see red on the screens today, even though I was told Friday it was about options. Well, today it's not, and it's still down, right? So there's that. So up until today, we were still outpacing the basket. US basket was outpacing the US broader market. And for an industry that just still doesn't have the changes that it needs yet, that's pretty shocking. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year, especially coming off that drop we saw in November, that we would go through this year, outperform the market, and still not see actual changes occur, just more headlines. And we've seen lots of headlines in the past 4 and 5 years. No way. So again, the returns that I want, nope, I want more. I'll be patient and wait it out.
Yep. No, I think that's fair. And I think important to point out just across sort of the different baskets or different ways to access the theme. I think they all are red today. So it's not like it's unique or specific to a specific vehicle or anything like that. That's just sort of kind of across the board where things are. Ultimately, like you're saying, I think it's just the volatility of trading around what could happen. Hopefully we do see a little bit of tempering of volatility, hopefully after we get the Bondi memo, hopefully after we see listing, hopefully after we see some of these knock-on effects that we're kind of anticipating to come along. There'll be still some level of volatility, of course, but hopefully that'll kind of push it further along to be a little bit more, normal. Ultimately, we'll see. I'm seeing some good questions come in. Let's see. Do you want to rip through some? Not rip through, but rip through some of
Yeah, I'm
these
looking
if
at the
I can
top
pull them
there
up.
from Dean.
Bu- 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 bu-
He says, what's the fair value of that US basket, of which I'm trying to avoid mentioning the ticker so we don't have to pull this content and for compliance review? And the answer is there's two values for it, right? There's a net asset value that we post on our website every day, because Friday was a good example of this. And then there's a market value that everybody else gets to trade at that will be impacted by premiums and discounts, right? These are less liquid underlying securities in the portfolio. And so when people want to buy aggressively, you're going to see market makers price it at a premium to what the basket's net asset value is. And when they want to sell aggressively, it's going to likely trade at a discount relative to what the net asset value of those basket of securities are at that moment in time. So the fair value is exactly the current value is what you see on the screen. I'll call the fair value the NAV, but the market makers would say the fair value is the NAV plus whatever it is you want to do. If you want to buy a lot, it's going to cost them a lot to go get those shares and then, sell you the ETF exposure while getting themselves hedged with the underlying. It's not a free ride. So you'll pay a premium when there's buying pressure. And then on the selling pressure days, you'll get a discount for what you're selling. Though if you're a buyer on those days, you're also being able to buy shares at a discount, which is, also a pretty good deal. So I'm not sure that entirely answers the question, but hopefully it helps clarify that a little bit more. I think we're on a bit of a delay, right?
Yes, that's good. Let me see if I can roll through some. Oh, can you hear me? Is it slow?
I can
All
hear
right.
you.
Coming through? All right. Let me pull up a question. I think the next ones relate to a lot of the Bondi stuff. Perfect. Let me throw this up. So we got one from
There's the
Mitch.
safe
I think this is talking about the announcement itself when it happened.
even happen. No real change.
So no
Yeah,
safe banking when it was rumored to happen. Real changes
right.
will happen
I
when
mean,
it
that's the
comes.
part that sort of sucks a little bit, but yeah, it's just an executive order. In its worst case scenario, there's no follow through. In its best case scenario, we get all the things that we're looking for happening, and with a little debate right around whether or not it's going to happen before the end of the year, which I am hearing that it could. Then the question being, is it actually effective, or is there a 30-day comment period? I don't know. We'll see. I,
A lot
I
of
would
unknowns.
love for there not to be, but procedurally, I understand why there needs to be.
Fair. I think the one thing that seems encouraging just from the executive order, that part of it getting done rather than kind of the full thing, is a lot of the participation that you've seen from the industry to try to get us here. It makes me think that that channel of communication is strong. Saw Kim, at the White House attending, supporting, connecting. I think all those things, encouraging
Kudos
in
to
terms of them
her
pushing
and the
forward
rest of the team behind it.
yes,
Yeah.
to get it all done. Okay, let me see if there's anything else. Oh, seeing from Benjamin. Let me pull this up. Um, he's asking, how do you feel about what I guess he's saying the coordinated timing of the drop in the sector? Is that suspicious? Exactly 1250, everything drops with so much velocity that nobody could get out. So I think that kind of ties into some of the confusion around what we saw.
Well, so I would say a couple things. I don't know how coordinated it was in the whole scheme of things. I don't know if it was just one big buyer, who's come in previously, then dumping at that moment, or coordinated, as they say, a bunch of different people trading it then. So yeah, I mean, all of it, I don't know. I mean, is it suspicious? Not, is it suspicious under the buy the rumor, sell the news theory? No. Is it suspicious in that part of me would think if you if you genuinely want to be bought into the space, you want to see those returns. And so even if in the short term it didn't have the price action that you wanted, you'd hang on to it with some more pending good news coming and you would try to eke a profit out of it, but I'm not an active trader. So, the timing of it all for me, of course, sucked. The results of it sucked. Do I think it's going to get better? Of course I do. Was it coordinated? I have no evidence of that. So, you know,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think
Not
that's fair.
not shocking again to see in this category, penny stocks, OTC, subcategory microcaps, right? That's really, really important. Not surprising to see um, lots of people jumping around the same theme. When it's up, let's get in it. When it's down, let's all get out of it. We all saw that happening. So I don't know, coordinated or pre-planned, coordinated, or people just reacting as fast as they can because they are short-term traders. And I didn't get the impression anyone had trouble getting out. I guess, well, you probably had trouble getting out or in during the halted periods, right? The point is
Yes.
from the exchanges to calm down the trades and allow, the broader market to find some price discovery. So yeah, whether you wanted in or out, you couldn't do it while it was halted, but you certainly could later over time.
Yep, I think that's a great point. Is there anything to be said about the fact that obviously this is the short week for the holidays and things are much thinner in terms of volume across sort of general markets? Anything to be said about it kind of happening around sort of the holiday times where things are a little bit lighter? Just curious in terms of.
I think you could. I think there's probably more to that day also being a options expiration day, right? So I know people were talking about the strike five price and the outstanding interest in that, right? But there's also outstanding interest in other strike prices as well. So if you were at six, on that was your expiration day, you weren't doing great. But if you were early up and got fours at some point or whenever, had fours, you're happy, I guess. And so I think that's probably in part also help exacerbate that process, which again, people don't have to hold options until they expire. Can if you want. If you were one of the ones that held the five strike price that Friday after the Washington Post day would have been an awesome day to go ahead and cover since you only had a week left. But on the slim chance you would think about it like I might think about it, which is, oh my God, I think I see more news coming. This could go wherever positively for me. I can see why you might hang on to them, but certainly people had plenty of a window in that strike price several days before to get out at a nice profit. And for any of those people who did hang on and then were surprised about the price action, count me in that group as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's fair. I did put a tiny toe into the option side just for kind of education
Look at
side.
you.
But of course, I think the lesson was there. It obviously short term is hard to trade around, so I'm glad to have kind of longer term shares and worry more about that. But it's still interesting to try. But I think it does kind of drive home how difficult it is to get that exact timing right.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately,
Do
seeing
you
some good.
see the comment from the person of who muted the ticker? So that is interesting to me. And only because the first time I saw someone post that, I search on the ticker a lot. and on X, and so it just kind of helps me get a feel for, not counting a lot of people that I've muted. It gives me a feel of, just what people are saying and what sentiment is, and gives me an opportunity where it makes sense to try to respond to some questions. And I saw a gap too, of lots of comments, and then it seemingly stopped. And I want to say when I looked, it seemed like there was a period of almost 2 hours based on the X timestamps where nothing was in there. What does that mean? I don't know. Was it a tech glitch from X? I don't know. Do I think, you know, you know, market
Elon,
makers
help.
somehow have the ability to hack X and then only cause a problem with one ticker symbol? Or do I think X is in on it? No, I don't. And so I don't know why I saw that gap at that time, but I did see the same thing. Um, I don't know. I don't know.
Strange. Got to ask Elon. Elon's the only one that
Yeah,
might have the answers on that one.
there you go.
Good question. But yeah, if you guys have more questions, keep them coming. Let me see.
I do at some point want to walk through the mechanics of a creation unit. That seemed to be one of the more popular questions, through this weekend, is just getting a general understanding of how that works.
Do that education. I'm
But are
just
there
seeing some
more
quick
questions?
comments and questions. Yeah. So I think Ace is asking or talking about the kind of the halt stuff, only seeing them on the way up and not the way down. I think that's not true. They come on the way down
Let me
normally, right?
see
That's
them on
to
the
protect.
well.
Yeah.
Friday it was on the way
Yeah.
down, right?
Yeah. Because that's
And I have
what they
seen some
originally.
on the way up, but the rules are the rules. So we can read into it when it happens, but the rules, I think, simply, and I think I put a link out there to the limit up, limit down rules, and I want to say we're in the 10% category. It's different percentage ranges depending on
Tiers.
what level they put you on. Yeah, on the NYSE. Um, and I believe I have seen, but there's data out there, so we don't have to guess. Halts have happened on both sides, and yeah, it was more downside halts than we had upside this time.
Yeah.
In fact, that was the cool thing. I think on Friday, right? It's the opposite, right? Friday, when that basket was up so significantly, I don't think it halted at all that day, right? So it was like a nice methodical, move up, no halts. And then the day that it halted on this past Friday, it was like you could see the little candlestick of volume of red. Whoop, that just drove it down, stopped it, and then people, seemingly shorter term traders, I believe, because as a long term trader, I didn't do anything, um, panicked, and wanted to get out. And if you're a short term trader, I get it. You're trying to protect these things and maybe make a living off short term trading, and so I get the reaction to it. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is one silver lining that it didn't get halted on the way up, because that would have been, I think, frustrating for people to want to see it drive up. But yeah, should protect sort of the flash crashes on the way down. All right, let me see what else is
Oh, and
going
we mailed this
out.
person Christmas presents, though I don't remember their name. The one who asked about the Twitter, the I am the armor.
Interesting.
Um, so apparently we
Let us know
sent
who
them
you are.
Christmas presents. Yeah.
Okay, let me see really quickly. From Ace again, have we as a company been invited to the White House for meetings? If so, can we get eyes on the Canadian stocks stealing all the limelight over the US stocks? That's great. Great question.
Sadly, I will need to disclose nobody at the White House gives a poop who we are.
Yeah.
So we don't get invites. And, even with the executives that are there from the cannabis industry, we're not in the cannabis industry, right? Which is actually in part why I feel comfortable answering all the swap stuff, all the trading stuff. That's our space. We think we know it fairly well. We don't know everything. And we kind of don't, we're not in the business of helping cannabis companies run their businesses and deal with the political stuff as if we know as good as them or better than them what to do. They need to be doing their thing. We're looking to invest in the right companies doing the right things, the companies leading that charge, the companies running their businesses effectively. And we're going to judge that ultimately based on the performance of those stocks. But we're not, trying to manage the industry in any way. And you don't want us managing the industry. You've got experts doing it. You want us staying in our lane. Our job is to continue to educate about the investments of the space, continue to certainly talk about what we see happens to the products that we have in the lineup, and hopefully ultimately, because I remember too, right, like, this a year or two ago, people were like, what are you guys doing to draw more capital into the space? And I'm like, this is a good example of what we do. We
Yeah.
talk about it, we try to get people excited about the opportunity, and we do it, seemingly nonstop, including the weekends.
Yeah.
And that is our job, right? We do want to grow the funds from a business perspective, but we also, want to see those prices go up.
Yeah.
If they
And
go up,
importantly, I
that's a
think
good thing for us.
that's true. Importantly, I think also talking to advisors, talking to people who might not be as familiar with it. I think online you see a lot of the conversation around the cannabis stocks. I think there is a familiarity with sort of the investment theme, but I think it is bringing it to those new eyes and hopefully new
Yeah.
dollars to kind of understand at least the opportunity. So yeah,
That's a good
constant.
point too. I mean, the interesting thing about how, I don't know, interesting of a year it's been in the cannabis investing space, we had those nice spikes earlier in the year. We saw some nice flows come in. And while we don't know who buys, right, we don't get that level of data. It just, they trade on an exchange and creates or redeems come in. Um, yeah, it feels like, we've gotten a lot new shareholders, and you can kind of see it with some of the questions this weekend where I'm like, I can't type out this long answer. The answer's out there if they do the research. So I try to, again, where I can, uh, be mindful of the fact that I'm interacting with people who haven't seen the baggage of the last, 4, almost 5 years. And so, for some, I'm repeating a lot of the same things that we've said in the past, but I do it because I hope that it's helpful for the new shareholders who come in and are kind enough to use our ETF over other choices they have.
Yes, that is well said. Okay, I know you want to get to the educational part, so I do see a good amount of
I'll keep
questions
doing
here. So
questions.
okay,
No,
maybe
keep
we can
firing
keep
away.
going. Okay, that sounds good.
We have, just for everybody watching, we've talked about the process for creates zillions of times, and worst case scenario, I'll cut a video just for that
I
later. But I'd rather do live questions if we can.
Okay, that sounds good. I do think actually you explained it in detail, I wanna say, like, 6 months ago. I can try to see if we can find that and isolate it
Yep. All
out.
right.
It might be helpful to have. So I'll look for that afterwards. But, funny gang, I would love to put up your comment, but your mentionings, ticker out right. So I will summarize it, which is saying, "Who benefits most from the executive order out of the holdings in a basket of cannabis names?" I
Well,
think
I think
ultimately
they all. Well, you go first. Huh? You're going to answer
oh,
that.
no. I was gonna say, well, Dan will be able to give more color tomorrow, but I would
Mhm.
imagine it's basically just reflective of how the, stocks are ranked. I feel like that's gotta be allocated, right? That's gotta be showing you what is positioned where,
Yeah. But
hopefully.
I think this is where once we get to this point, and this has been the challenging of I think for Dan of how you allocate the basket and a lot of feedback we've gotten right from different stocks that we pick and how we weight them. People are not shy, about sharing their feedback around it, which is appreciated that they're looking and watching. But I think in this instance, to finally get to the point where, again, it's not there yet, but we are on the cusp of getting this done, which again, I don't know what other guidance is going to come around it, which is also important for custody and listing, right? If you just tell me it's Schedule 3, I'm going to tell you, I don't know that the price action that I think all of us long term investors are looking for will be there until custody and uplisting come from it. But in general, I think this actually benefits what we might refer to as the tier two, threes, and fours, right? These are the companies that people have looked at and said, why are you holding these things? They're going to go out of business. And I get it; they're smaller, though some are smaller, like C21, and still running a very profitable, growing business, which is awesome. But I actually think it's those guys that probably have some of the strongest springs to bounce back up. Just my personal opinion. I do look at the glass houses of the world and think, man, if they can go interstate, right? Because it's Tylenol with codeine classification when it happens, right? Tylenol with codeine, which you can ship to CVS, or Walgreens, or wherever your local pharmacy is. I don't see why then Glass House, someone like a Glass House and others, can't be one of the most efficient, high quality products and ship at least medically throughout the US. Holy cow, does that start to change the game for a company like that? And of course, the bigs, I think will continue to get big. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that again with custody, with uplisting, with better terms from banking and credit and debt, them to be much more aggressive about M&A and acquisitions. But also don't forget, these are, seemingly fairly capital intensive companies. So don't be surprised also to start to see, some dilution and things like that in some of the shares of these stocks. But what we want is them growing far faster than the dilution we're seeing, which also don't forget about that. Growth has not really been there for this industry for the last few years, right? Some getting over double digits, but many not over the course of a year. So that is a solution that, that needs to be, or a problem that needs to be fixed. And maybe some of that gets fixed with the Farm Bill intoxicating hemp loophole being closed. Even though I'm not sure I entirely know what to read yet into the whole Medicare and covering CBD and the $500 a quarter benefit or something that Trump talked about. But regardless, that sounds awesome as well. Anytime you can get, anytime you can be in an industry that can make a product that's covered by insurance, going to create an opportunity. So again, it all feels good. It's just all going to take time. You're not going to see the gains in a day or a week or a month, and it's still going to be a bumpy ride. And as we get through all of it, but I feel it's an industry coming out of prohibition, and at least for part of my portfolio, that's where I want it to be.
That is true. I will also add, I feel like there's been a lot of discussion around companies that have specific footprint allocations to places like Pennsylvania, Florida, all that stuff as well. Hopefully, potentially, that's also another push. Sounds like Pennsylvania
Right.
is waiting for that schedule to change to
The
make it even
possibility
more
of
clear.
280E rebates for some of these companies,
Of course.
huge, huge.
True, true, true.
Possibility,
Okay,
re-emphasizing the
it's
word possibility. And again, won't happen in a day.
it's true.
So
It's
if you're
true.
day trading over a few days or a week, or you're options trader but active, good luck. It's volatile, and
Yep.
it's microcap, and they're easy to push around.
Yes, that is a good reminder. Great point. Also, funny gang, just sort of the things that can change on the other side of rescheduling, which is great. Stevie's
Mhm.
got a good question. Thanks, Stevie. Can you talk about how the ETF is at the mercy of the underlying? I wouldn't say at the
Mercy. No, it's
mercy
not
of,
at the mercy.
but
It's just reflective of the value of the underlying. So whatever happens to the underlying, that's roughly what the ETF is worth. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't mean that you're buying it throughout the day at that NAV price of those underlying securities. You're going to see a reflection of some kind of level of premium or discount associated with that, depending on where the pressure is for market makers. But that's it. At the end of the day, the ETF is a mirror of the results of those underlying stocks.
yes. Well said. Okay, there's one from Ace again that I cannot put up, but I will read, which is 280 removal. How will an ETF perhaps calculate if the underlying begins paying dividends as previously mentioned by some of the operators?
So I don't know I don't recall anyone actually specifically saying they would, or at least pay dividends anytime soon. I do think these will be high cash flow businesses. And I think in 5, 7, 10 years, maybe look more like tobacco stocks, right? Where they sell a high margin product, high cash, flow, high dividend payers. I don't believe that's the case anytime soon. A lot of these companies have a significant amount of debt. I hope that they're going to be super aggressive in trying to, whether it's M&A or building out their brands, right? Someone's going to be the Starbucks, right? From a dispensary perspective, I think, as we get more legislative changes, right? I think the growing community is going to shrink, and you're going to grow where it's cost efficient and quality. And you'll still have craft, growers in there as well. The rest, I think, will be about branding, storefronts, and distribution. So again, I look at it again. This is just my way of looking at it. I look at it like Starbucks, right? They're just selling coffee. You can go grow your own coffee and grind it if you want. You probably don't want to grow it everywhere because it doesn't grow so well everywhere. So you're going to find high quality growers. You're going to put some quality, some branding, a little marketing in the product that you have. Sell it at a premium, though there'll be some mid-level cost. There'll be probably some value price stuff as well. Depending on ultimately how distribution happens for cannabis, again, you could see it being very much not a 7-Eleven and a gas station kind of thing, right? Like Red Bull, you would see it more as Starbucks or Pete's Coffee, where you're going to that storefront that's branded by the products that they sell, and getting the experience that company is trying to bring you through the products they sell.
Yes. Said. Okay, another question I'm seeing coming through. I feel like there are a few here, so I want to make sure I'm getting to them.
It's good.
This is a good question from SunGrow Kit. Speaking of growing your own, could
Yeah.
Friday's drop
Which
scare people
someone
away?
on this call is trying to do, but as I last look at your plants, they look like
Uh,
they're sad.
it's true. They're still alive though. I will. Yeah, that's true. I'm
Yeah.
giving it a
Oh,
try.
oh, well, it went
Oh,
away.
oh,
Was Friday's
sorry.
drops
Okay.
what?
So I think is the volatility that we saw on
Oh,
Friday with the drop, is that going to potentially scare away people? What's sort of the thought there. I have, yes.
So I think if you're asking me, I think most of the action over the last week or two is probably people coming into it in the short term. Had headlines, had mainstream coverage, you get newsletters talking about it, quick trades, get in and out. So I think they're not scared away. They are just short-term investors and traders, and they'll move on to the next headline or whatever. If you're a longer term investor, I think it kind of depends, right? So I just think of what's my own opinion and view. And my opinion and view as a long term investor is, sucked, right? Friday sucked.
Yeah, I
I
did.
thought it was going to be so awesome. Did it shake me out of it? No. I mean, I kind of get it. I kind of get it. And so, it just creates another opportunity for me as a long term investor to get in. I do believe real changes are coming. It doesn't all happen in a day. So I'd like to believe if you're an investor in the space for all of those longer term reasons, you're like me and you look at Friday and are like, God, it sucked. But you also look at the last 6 months being, this category being up 125%. And you're like, holy shit, that's awesome. And again, prior to this morning, beating the market this year, which is also up, double,
Double digits.
well, it's not in the 20s, right? But double digits, yeah. Um, so I think if you're a long-term investor, it didn't scare you. If you're a trader, um, and you made money, you were happy. And if you're a trader and you lost money, you're some amount of them on X are pointing fingers, but that's how that goes sometimes.
That's true. In terms of tracking like new investment as well, though, I'd imagine a lot of those dollars are kind of waiting for rescheduling to be fully in place, maybe. So
I
I'm
think
I'm sure you're not getting exposed potentially to that volatility
Yeah,
for people who really
and
want the clear
that's a
upside.
great point. I think some amount of people have been saying, I don't need to get into this, right? They've seen all the volatility. Wait till there's an announcement and then I'm going to get in. And then what did they do? Their timing was waiting until the announcement and then they got in. And then what happened was the freaking bottom fell out.
Mm.
And so they didn't get the last, when I reference what's happened in the last 6 months about how much it's been, they didn't get any of that, right? They were like, I'm going to wait until the announcement and then I'm going to get in. And then if they got right back out, I get it. It was painful. It's a short-term trade, and I don't know what to say except that short-term trading is hard, and most people lose in short-term trading. So yeah, if that was your catalyst, now if your catalyst is I'm not getting in until there's real change, do I think that's a good catalyst? Yeah. Do I think less so after Friday? Yeah, I think as long as this category is small, again, I'll make the phrase sub sector, OTC, penny stocks, right? In some instances, um, we need real institutional buyers. We need better long-term, investor and shareholders who can buy and move with size. We need stuff that we saw with Cureleaf happen with index inclusions, right? Which is going to be fantastic. So don't expect that volatility to go away until these stocks, these companies are in more of a normal uplisted custody with some real healthy investors behind it, which I think I said that to someone too. I said, they were talking about the performance here in the short term with the news. And I'm like, let's check in 6 months after custody and uplisting, right? And I said 6 months. I didn't explain this when I posted the tweet in response to whatever their question was, but I said 6 months because even when you get custody and uplisting, then are all the institutions coming in on day one? Of course they're not. They're going to do their due diligence. They're going to kick the tires on these companies. They're probably not even going to use the ETF, right? They're going to pick a handful of stocks that they like. Think about it. It's going to take a while to get approved on the big wirehouse platforms, Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan. I do know there's some people who can hold shares there. They get permission to do it. But when it's broadly available for that financial advisor network or platform or whatever, that's when I think these stocks can be in that healthier environment. And I expect, again, this industry to look quite a bit different. Maybe some consolidations, maybe some mergers, maybe a couple still fall out. We'll see. But yeah, check in then, and I'll be able to give a better answer.
Yes, no, I think that's good. It does remind me, I think Funny Gang was mentioning basically kind of what you're talking about. It's hard to pin down a specific number, but where would things potentially be on the other side of exactly what you're saying? Getting the things that you want. What's the best case scenario? I think it's hard to pin down a number, but I think it would be better is a
Yeah, that's where I would say search X, get a bunch of different answers. No clue. My only best guess is, m- for me, meaningfully higher from where we are today.
sounds reasonable.
And I'm not an
Uh,
analyst, or a very good one.
well, fair enough. Also, yes, Ace, if you'd like a hat, DM me. Why not? Rock it. That's great. Model
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
feel like I've
We
seen
should have
the
some of these. And we still have some of the, can't say the ticker, but
Cannabis.
yep. It's, it's hilarious. You hitting the button
Yes.
when you
DM
say
me,
it?
MB Advisors, and I will get you hooked up. Post a picture. That's good.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, what? Hit what? Oh, the mute button? Dang.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're hitting the
All
little
right, let me see. I'm
funny
seeing some
thing,
more
right? When you
questions on
say it.
trying to guess the valuations. Huh? Can you hear?
I
Oh,
can hear.
okay. Perfect. It's
We're
going. Okay, let's
hitting
see.
that delay
Someone was
every
also
once in
mentioning
a
you were talking
while.
about coffee.
Yes,
Let me
agreed.
talk nice and slow. Okay. Pepsi and Coke makes sense. Um, this is an interesting question. We've talked about it more from like the alcohol
Um,
perspective for GLP-1s. That would be my only guess, is it maybe impacts.
As a possible GLP user, I don't think it impacts you. I think it's fine. It does impact alcohol, but I don't know that I see it impacting this space,
Fair enough. I
except for
think it's
the munchies part.
that is true. I have heard that's positive, obviously, for the appetite adding element, but I have heard for the psychedelic medicine part, that's actually been something they've been putting a lot of focus into in terms of how quickly you're able to pick up sort of the medicine effects. Anyhow, it's interesting. It's developing. Yeah, we'll see. Interesting question from Ace. If you could change something in the ETF's fundamentals, what would it be and why? I think it's probably having
So
uplisting.
I'd change all the legislative. Yeah, I'll change all
Yeah.
the legislative stuff. Preferably descheduled, not rescheduled. I need custody and listing. Um, I'm glad to have that hemp loophole closed. I think it's better for the industry. So that's been done. And then I think with that, when I mentioned earlier about finding some growth, the industry's got to find some growth. So I think those, yeah, are the things that if I could change, I want all, and I think they will change. But if I could change, those are the things I'd want to change.
Let's
I
change
would
these.
deschedule custody, listing, close cartels, whatever, all that crazy stuff, right? And we need, which is unfortunate because then we're saying what we really want is enforcement on those businesses and companies that are doing it, which, they're operating illegal. You kind of want that, right? Leave home growers alone, stuff like that, right? No, they're not hurting anybody. But if it's large scale, whatever, no different than if someone started doing that in the bourbon industry right now. They'd go in there and slap the cuffs on them and take them to jail. So I want that kind of enforcement on the illegal, illicit side of cannabis. So yeah, those are the changes I would make.
Yeah. All right. Nothing different, I think, on that front. That makes sense. And hopefully we see our way there. Interesting question from Funny Gang. I think this is when we were talking kind of about the Starbucks and kind of where things could go. He's asking, have we
Oh,
seen branding high margin products yet? Are there any countries or states that you see real differentiation in the products yet? Good question.
I probably haven't bought in enough different states, but as a Maryland purchaser, most frequently, the funny thing is, I don't know that I have a good sense relative to what I've been trying and purchasing lately, which is I've been trying to really lean into the higher premium flour. And I think we've talked about this. Use the PAX, whatever, dry herb vaporizer, right?
Mhm.
Am I
Good price.
saying that correctly? Um, and so I've been trying to use high quality product there just to see if the experience and the feel is different. And it is. And so what are the margins on that, right? Because I could definitely buy a lot cheaper stuff. I don't know that there's a incremental higher cost. And in particular, I've been using most of the Verano products, right? In fact, we had Verano on when I was interviewing them, Aaron Miles, and was telling them
Mhm.
about the banana muffin stricken, which is really good, which is a hybrid. So, and I probably could have asked him, right? I didn't even think about it, right? Is their margins much higher on that relative to whatever the cost is to make it, whatever the relative to the cost is for the lower value priced product? So my sense is they do have higher margin for higher quality. But I think, company by company or strain by strain, I'm not sure that I have that information, but someone like a Todd or others would know that probably better.
Fair enough. I would say I feel like a lot of the models depend now on word of mouth and that really deep relationship with well-educated bud tenders who are able to kind of lay that out and explain it. I think a big uh, jump and shift will be when we're able to see better sort of broader marketing that is able to kind of pull at those differentiations. I do think you do see the names are a way to kind of differentiate and find some branding there. Color, packaging, all that stuff can make a difference. But I think being able to have that reach through social or just online will be a big boost. Ultimately, we'll see. But yeah, also can't speak to the margins on specific products necessarily. All right, I think I've seen a comment from Michael in Jane Street refrain from wiping us out every time we try to invest in this space. I know we
I
covered it
again,
early on.
people might be
I don't
looking at
know.
data that I didn't see, and I haven't looked that closely. I don't know that it was Jane Street. What I think I saw, at least online, is people were referencing their regulatory history in certain instances, and I think including overseas, and they were looking at what they got charged for and paid a fine for or whatever, and sort of applying it to here. Is that going on? I don't know. I've seen any evidence. I don't know. Now, I wasn't looking at what trader by trader, and firm by firm, right? Who was trading it? I'll leave that up to the regulators to figure out, right? They don't need me and don't need my help, and it's not my area of expertise, quite frankly, right? We are product builders and product marketers at the end of the day. Um, so I hope it's not them. I don't. I'm going to stay positive and say that I think it's not them. And again, but I will say, you know, whether it's newsletters, whether it's aggressive hedge funds, whether it's a prop desk getting in this volatile space, like they like Bitcoin and they like the 2x, micro strategy or 4x micro strategy or whatever they're trading. They like to trade vol, and they live for it. And when it's small stocks like this and you're a longer term investor, you're just going to get whipped around. I get it. I understand that. Getting into the space doesn't feel good on some days, but I'm a long termer.
Yeah, that's true. Different than we always talk about, I think, risk and volatility, though, because I think that's different. Just the volatility is you getting moved
Right.
around while you're still holding it. You don't lock it in until you lock it in.
and
Right.
and I expect to get paid, right, on holding high volatile stuff, right? I think about what guys like Mark Yusko would talk about, right? He talks about the history of Amazon and the draw ups and the drawdowns and who made money over that time, right? And he talks about how there are things that are like that, whether it's a small cap advantage, whether it's a volatility advantage, or all these things that you should expect to get paid for over time. You don't always, right? And maybe you won't in this category, maybe I won't in this category, but for being patient and being a long-term viewer or holder, and then having to live through all of this, I expect the return stream on this to be far better than something that you call steady Eddie or whatever return stream over the next 5 or 10 years. So I hope I get that. I think I'll get that, but it remains to be seen.
That's true. Not that there's not a place for the steady Eddies as well, but I
Yeah,
think, yeah,
yeah, I have that in my
something that,
portfolio. I do. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
I
something
am
that's
not
sustainable.
all in. I'm not 100% invested on cannabis by any means. Please don't do that, right? With all of your money, be smart, diversify. There's other risk areas you can invest in. Think about non-correlation in your portfolio where you can. All that stuff matters.
It's true. You mentioning Yusko reminds me, I think I'd seen a tweet that I think he had posted in 2018, but it had been recirculated, and I have it up so I can read it. But he was saying the greatest wealth is created by being an early investor in quote unquote innovation, which that can mean multiple things. Making that investment requires believing in something before the majority of people understand it. You'll be mocked, ridiculed, and criticized for
Right.
your non-consensus action. It can be absolutely worth it. That's
We
just
are
one view.
definitely being
Again,
mocked,
that's okay.
criticized, and
You
ridiculed
gotta have
only by
conviction.
a
You gotta
small
have
amount.
whatever.
Yeah,
You gotta
plenty of
prioritize.
others that are understand and are in it. But yeah, absolutely, that totally makes sense. And I think that was another comment I gave to someone, right? I was like, this is why companies don't like to go public, sub $1 billion, right? And there's all these unicorns that come out to market. They'd much rather be in the private space, right? And we saw that with something like WeWork, right? Remember how valuable that company was when it was private, and then it has to face the reality of the public markets. It was a very different valuation. They'd have been much happier, staying in those private markets for as long as they could, but it wasn't reality, right? So to have these companies come in, this is in my opinion, and how I approach it, a mechanism, a means to invest like an early stage venture capital, right? You're getting these companies at an early, fragile, difficult time. And I'm doing it because I expect to get far more rewarded than buying something that's a 10 billion or $1 trillion market cap, even though some of those are doing really well as well, right? In the Nvidia and Apple areas or whatever. But yeah, it's the and these companies had to probably really, quite frankly, come to market, right? Because they can't use the traditional banking channels. So they did have this mechanism to go to retail and try to find some capital flows there to grow their business. So, it's risky. I get it. I know why I'm in it. If this is where maybe I'll give the public service announcement, right? If you are uncomfortable in an investment, you don't have to stay in it. You don't have to make your money back the same way you lost it. If you're really struggling with some of the technical aspects of understanding swaps and everything else, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can about it, but you got to consider, the services of financial advisor to give you some discipline around your approach. These products are complicated, right? Someone asked me to simply describe sort of the operational mechanism of an ETF, and I'm like, start with the prospectus. It's only, about a 100-page document. These aren't simple. And so me giving someone a simple answer isn't giving someone a thorough answer and a thorough understanding of how it works. So, I'll try here and there, but I want to be careful about stuff like that. You got to read it. If you're working on your own, then you got to do the work. Otherwise, consider getting some licensed
Oh,
professional. I was about to say licensed professional help, and it almost sounds like therapy, but I mean financial, licensed professional help.
I don't know. Therapy can go for everyone. That is fair. Okay, let's see.
I'm
Okay, I know
yamming
we are
some
close.
about now, but
We're close on time, so I think it's good. I'm seeing more questions about sort of like what's the most bullish scenario. I think that's good. I hope we see. I don't want to pin down numbers and things like that. I think that gets into tricky territory. I think your comment earlier of it should be better, or I don't know. That's my comment. Whatever. It should
yeah,
be
I
better.
think, well, here's what I think we'll see, right? We'll see rescheduling. I do believe we'll see banking, maybe not at the same time. I do believe with banking comes uplisting. I hope it's close, but maybe not at the same time. I think there's a bit of a pause from there in the industry. I think that's about what we're going to get. Um, Now, and then as a side note, with the Farm Bill hemp loophole closing, we'll see what happens there. A lot of companies, unfortunately, are going to go out of business. Hopefully, they can maybe move into this cannabis space and get in here and compete and offer some fantastic products for those that are doing it the right way. So we'll hopefully see some growth. We will see some of that research. We'll see some level of normalcy. And the interesting thing that I would love to see, and wild speculation alert, but I'd love to see within a couple of years, right? Maybe it's not the president, maybe it is the Senate and the House that says, let's get this thing off Schedule 3. Let's get it descheduled. Let's put it, in the area of sort of alcohol and tobacco. Let's make sure there's oversight. Let's make sure the cartels are out of the business. Make sure there's clean products out there. And I'd love to see that. That's probably a bit dreaming to expect to see that in this administration by the end of it. But I'd love to. Just in relative to the question of what I'd like to see.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. Okay, I know we are running so tight on time. I feel like I keep
But
seeing
if
some
we
final
don't
ones.
pull it, can't we go longer than an hour if we don't need to pull it?
That's true. That's true. For replays, though, I think it's okay. All right, let's keep rocking and rolling.
Is
We'll see
this a
what we can
good
fit in.
time to announce that I'm going to be on the Dales report at 4?
Yes, that is true. So if you've got more questions, bring them along as well. That is a great point.
I'm taking questions all weekend long, all day long.
All day, every day. That's true.
And I don't mind, by the way. For those of you that use our product, again, thank you. We appreciate it. I know people are frustrated with the returns and the price action. If I could control it and make it go straight up, I would. But to the extent that you spend time with us here, to the extent that you use any of our products, and we have a bunch of other awesome products, by the way, just know that we appreciate you, and I'll spend whatever time I need to make sure you're as comfortable as you can be, with at least with what we know about how these products work and what we see in the marketplace.
Well said. Can't ask for more than that. That is great. I was going to turn it to a funny thing, but that was very heartfelt. And
No,
God,
all right.
Brain Dead was saying it was my fault for today and tomorrow.
I
Very
want
funny.
to now go look up quotes, but I think this machine I'm on is going to cut
Let
out the
me.
video, so I
I
can't.
can.
Maybe I'll do it
Let
on
me
my
see.
phone.
I can. Yeah,
And
I can do it on my phone too. I think we're still broadly in the red for the whole theme right now. But let's see how we're
yeah.
looking.
And
But
I shake my
moving up
head and
slightly.
say, I'm just gonna dip in again, probably next week. Then maybe I should wait for the new year, but um,
Yeah, because things are going to
yeah,
get even thinner, right? I would imagine as we're right up against Christmas.
yeah, yep.
All right, good question, which is interesting. From Renato, Robinhood versus NYSE and Nasdaq. Should I even try to understand the difference in uplisting? So there's difference between uplisting and being available on platforms. So maybe I
Yeah,
can
so
repeat
Robinhood's
that.
just a brokerage firm. And so, like Fidelity, like Schwab, well, I should clarify. Places like Fidelity and Schwab, I think you have access, well, you of course have access to the ETF and you have access to the OTC securities. From what I've seen at some of the bigger wirehouses, you don't have access to either. They'll restrict the ETF. They just seemingly don't like cannabis for now. A place like Robinhood is interesting because the ETF has been available there, and then just recently, they started trading one of the OTC stocks, Glasshouse. I think, as I understand their business model, they don't trade OTC stocks on Robinhood's platform, because there's not a payment for order flow like there is on listing products, which is how they allow their commission-free trading. But yeah, so segregate Robinhood from NYSE, and NA. It's funny that
Yes.
did he say NASD?
Not,
Because that's, or did he say FINRA? Because NASD is old school, by the
okay. It
way.
is NASD.
Um,
Yeah.
Ooh, oh, that's someone who's got a few years on them, like me, who
Or
knows what
the D is
NASD
the
is.
D is kind of close to the Q key, so it's hard to tell. I feel like people are
It's
typing
all
fast
right.
sometimes.
Oh, so you think you might have meant NASDAQ, which is, now what old NASD was. But
Yeah.
so yeah, so the exchanges are different. And they're different from a brokerage firm, which again is the weird thing, which is another thing we've talked about. Our understanding of it is the decision not to uplist right now or yesterday is a risk decision, not a rule or a regulatory decision, right? It doesn't make sense to me logically that, Fidelity and Schwab can trade these stocks and let you hold it in custody on their brokerage accounts, and the SEC has not done any enforcement action against them, and the exchanges couldn't do the same, and quite frankly, the banks couldn't do the same. So, in my opinion, it's a risk decision on their part. But yeah, so with uplisting and the meaningful difference in that versus being available on Fidelity and Schwab, that uplisting does get you, index inclusion, institutional interest. To get institutional interest, you do need to be off Schedule One as well. A lot of big institutions will have investment policies that'll restrict stuff like that. But that aside, listing is really, really important. Actually, probably in the price of some of these stocks are important, right? Big institutions don't like penny stocks sub $5, right? It's sort of a bit of an old mentality, but some people have that in their investment policy. So Robinhood isn't as critical, though getting access to the broader brokerage space, JP Morgan, Merrill Lynch, all of that is really important. Exchange listing, really, really important. And
Yeah.
custody.
That's true. I think index inclusion and, like you're saying, sort of more institutions, that's important and that would hopefully come and follow. But I do think just making it easier for your average investor to get access, it's easier, less expensive. That makes a difference in terms of if you want access to cannabis themes, that would be easier. And ultimately, that would hopefully drive capital. We'll see.
Yeah.
Question from Ace. Is share count much different than the all-time highs for share price?
Is share count different from the share price all-time highs? Yes. We, up until the redemptions we saw over the last few days, were at all-time high of a share count, but our all-time high of a price was way back when it was $55 a share. So
Mhm.
again, remember it was started at 25, had that nice run up to 55. Its worst price was what? April-ish this year, about in my 6-month time frame that I mentioned. If you do a 6-month chart of a US basket, you'll see it right about where that low price was, which was around probably $2, close to $2 a share. And then we're where we're at now. So which again sort of speaks to, not counting today, hasn't been a horrible year for nothing actually changing yet. So again, fingers crossed, better news to come. More
Yes.
volatility ahead, more crazy
Yes.
trading shenanigans ahead. If it bothers you, don't invest in cannabis stocks
Yes. There are other great
or
themes in
cannabis ETFs.
or yes, that's fair. Or things that just have the level of volatility. I think
Yeah,
that makes sense for
or
risk.
Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more new questions come in, which I think is actually, wait, just kidding. One just came in. Good question from Facebook, which I think we don't see as many on Facebook, which is great. Thanks for
Hey,
joining Facebook
Tom,
from
thanks for
Tom.
watching us on Facebook.
Thanks so much. What do you think happens if the only thing that comes out of this
Oof, it's a
is
good
280E
question.
going away? I
So
know.
basically saying Schedule 3 and no other guidance.
No, yeah.
Hmm. So it's good from a cash flow perspective. Um, we've already got the hemp bill closed. I think that's going to be good. It'll take a while. Three, so right? The loophole doesn't close for a year, roughly, at less than a year at this point. It's going to start impacting these businesses in the next 3, 4, 6, 9 months. So they won't really have the full year to operate. But the people who are super illegal probably won't care anyways. So if I get two things, just Schedule 3, just 280, as Tom described, but I've already gotten hemp loophole closed. And again, assuming no other changes, I think we go up. I think we go up from here. For those who are invested in the space and are comfortable with not having custody and listing, we'll like that even better. And I'll still believe that that's coming later, even though I won't know when. So I still see it as a good thing. but not nearly as good as we need. And if I genuinely thought that's all we were going to get, to be honest with you, I don't know that I'd be in the space much longer. But I'm in the space longer because I think, we get to normalization, not only the normalization with this product in the category, but I think we get to the point where we find some real impactful medicinal benefits for people that can genuinely change their lives. And so I want to be an investor throughout that process. If as long as I see that path is still happening, if it's just as Tom describes, which is a great question, Tom, I might become more of a short-term investor if I thought that was the case.
Fair enough. Although it is pretty reasonable that we might see that scenario for a short time ahead of potentially more things coming along.
Yeah,
Again, very
absolutely.
different than exclusively
Absolutely.
and only, but there might be a
Right.
brief period that
And,
could
and
be.
that's why if it's just that, well, don't, when people say to the moon or whatever, we need listing, we need custody, and then we need some time for these, banks and brokerage firms to process that and get procedures in place. So, again, call me 6 months after we get through those things.
Yeah. The good news is though, I do think the
But
industry
ask me
is
any questions anytime.
put them in, put them in. But yeah, no, I think that's a good thing that the industry is communicating those key points as well. So I feel like, really focusing in on those key things that are needed. So I think they're being not addressed, but they are top of mind, I think, for the administration working through the stuff. Great to see the EO go out. We'll see what happens next, I think, ultimately. Yes, great point, Mitch. Just like I think Noah was saying, same things.
Mhm.
Some
Yeah,
general
huge,
benefits.
huge.
Huge, huge, huge. Okay. Not seeing much else in the world of cannabis, but seeing a fun comment to balance it out. A nice, fun, easy comment. What are you cooking this
What are
weekend?
you
Anything
cooking
good?
this weekend? You go first.
What am I cooking? It's a great question. I think might do the like seven fishes setup.
What is that?
It's like I think an Italian tradition or something where
Oh,
so I think you just have seven different types of fish, but I think the definition of fish is pretty loose. I think like shrimp would count.
mhm.
So do something like that. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully some kind of pie. That's what I'm hoping for personally. What about you?
Uh, I think for us, and we've already started, right? I got the kids in town, which has been fantastic. And then everyone's heading their separate ways, almost literally the afternoon of Christmas. Um, so for us, it's pretty traditional. For dinners, it's sort of ham, biscuits, gravy, almost Thanksgiving like, but more sort of ham-ish, right, than turkey. But what's big for us, at least, is more the breakfast brunches. So it's biscuits, it's waffles, it's pancakes, and then of course the house is littered with red and blue and green colored, cookies and candy everywhere. So, and we're always slow each year. We just were decorating the tree last night.
Oh my gosh.
So we're always very slow in getting those things done.
Okay, that's fine. You get to have a very concentrated exposure to the holiday spirit. You're not having it drawn out where you get a little tired of
And
it.
we finished Hanukkah last night for those who celebrate.
Nice. There you go. We should have done I was going to do like a Hanukkah high cannabis
Nice.
related one. I didn't know if it was like not appropriate.
We're
I don't know.
we're a split household, so we get both.
Do both. All right. Well, a lot of ways to celebrate, a lot of ways to yeah, get together, I think is the key thing, which is awesome. I do like the bon appetit. That's very funny. It's bon appetit, but bon appetit. All right. Well, I think that's it. I feel like covered a ton. This is, I think, one of the longest nooners that we've done.
I kind of
2025.
feel like, at least based on the questions I saw on X this weekend, people might be taking it easy on me here. And I think for people on X, especially some of the anonymous accounts, it's easier for them to get crazier stuff. But maybe tune into the Dales report. That one will probably be quite a bit more lively. So
We'll see.
yeah, it sounds good. But yeah,
I
thanks for
think,
everybody for tuning in and taking time and asking for sure.
yes, appreciate it. I do think some of that, not vitriol, but I think some of the initial reactions and responses to that calms down over time as there's a little
Frustrating.
bit of
I get it.
digesting and figuring it out.
I
But yeah,
get
I
it.
think there's a quick response.
I get it. And that's why, genuinely, I'm putting myself out here, right? For all the reasons I described earlier, which is we want to be there for you as shareholders in the fund or users of the fund, even if you're traders, it's all good.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'll offer myself up as tribute or pinata or whatever for people to vent their frustrations. Because I get it. I'm frustrated too. But we'll move from here.
It's not the end. There's more to do. So I think that's great. Well, thanks for taking the time. Really genuinely appreciate it, especially holiday month. This is where it happens to fall, but I think it makes a difference to be able to be out there, be transparent, talk through different questions and kind of have some education and perspective sharing. All that matters and makes a difference. So I appreciate it as well. Everyone who tuned in, also appreciate you being here and joining, seeing some new faces, which is great. Checking, I can see vaguely our numbers as they're filtering in and they look solid, which is great to see people tuning in, especially again on a holiday
That's going to
weekend.
up your clout score.
There you go. Gosh, I don't even know whatever I
Follow
am.
McKinsey at MP Advisor
Uh,
Shares on X.
I would, yes, that would be great. You're welcome to. Yeah, that'll be good.
But
All
don't
right. All
yell at
that
her. Just yell at me.
You're welcome to yell at me too, I guess. I don't know, whatever. It's fine. I'll take a little bit off your plate. But yeah, so yeah, that'll be good. It's an interesting holiday. Again, I know it's short, but we are going to have Dan on tomorrow. So we're going to keep the conversation going. Maybe talk a few other themes as well, because there's some other good ones out there that are having a
You may need
good
to
year.
get Dan high before the show so he's mellow, Dan. Otherwise, he might be slightly agitated, Dan.
Well, I feel like he cares. He wants to, whatever. We'll see. But it'll
He
be good. But
does,
stay
believe
tuned.
me.
It's good. Well, stay tuned. Join us tomorrow, same time, 12 p.m. Eastern, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much, everyone.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.